Time is 6:30. Roll call.
Antori.
Here.
Raymond Mass.
Here.
Eileen Hogan.
Here.
Van Euro.
Here.
Sharon Lee.
Here.
Vincent White. Absent. Paul Cagnon.
Here.
Anna Cruz. Amanda Doremus. Absent. Eugene Horowitz.
Here.
Chris Havens.
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been posted at Borough Hall, filed with the Borough Clerk and mailed to the Asbury Park Press, to River Times, and the Star Ledger. This meeting is being tape recorded. In the event the applicant uses the service of a court reporter to transcribe the tapes, the board requires a copy of the transcript. We'll break about at 8 p.m. for deliberation of testimony heard thus far in the conference room on the first floor. Public is invited to attend. However, discussion between board members and the public is not permitted at that time. No new cases will be heard after 9 p.m. Red Bank Zoning Board of Adjustment has maintained a policy cutoff hour of 9:30 p.m. for its hearings. Any applicants not heard this evening will be carried over to the next scheduled meeting. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
to the republic
which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So on non-agenda items, we have some administrative matters. We have oaths of office to 3 of our members.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think only 2 of the members are here tonight to be sworn in, Eugene Horowitz and Paul Cagno. So gentlemen, if you could stand up, please. And what we'll do is you'll repeat after me. I'll say, state your name. We'll start with Eugene and then go down to Paul, and then you can repeat after me. So if you can raise your right hand, I state your name.
Eugene Horowitz. Paul Kanya.
Do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will
I will
faithfully,
faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of the office
of the office
of a member
of a member
of the Red Bank Zoning Board of Adjustment
Red Bank Zoning Board of Adjustment
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Okay, so we have a reorganization of the board for 2024. Do we have a nomination for chairperson?
I'll nominate Raymond.
Second.
Second.
So, sorry. Antori.
Yes.
Raymond Mass.
Yes.
Eileen Hogan.
Yes.
Van Euro.
Yes.
Sharon Lee. Paul Cagnon.
Yes.
And Anna Cruz.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have vice chair, nomination for vice chair.
Nominate Dan Torrey.
I'll second.
Can we get it all in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed or abstained?
Okay, we have next up is board secretary. Nomination.
I'll nominate.
I'm McIntyre.
I will second. You did?
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Yes. Any abstained or opposed? No.
Next, we have a nomination for board attorney. I'll nominate Kevin Kennedy.
I second.
Need to do a
Yeah.
roll call.
Antori.
Yes.
Raymond Mass.
Yes.
Eileen Hogan.
Yes.
Van Euro.
Yes.
Sharon Lee.
Yes.
Paul Cagnon.
Yes.
And Anna Cruz.
Yes.
You know what, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to thank the board members. First of all, wish everyone a happy new year, but I've been fortunate to have this appointment for a number of years, and I very much appreciate it. I very much respect it. I'm still excited by it, and I thank you, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we have board engineer. Nomination for Ed Herman.
Nominate Ed Herman.
I'll second.
Ann Thurring,
Yes.
Raymond Mass,
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro,
I'm gonna abstain for potential conflict of interest.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz.
Yes.
We have a nomination for the conflict board attorney. It was Mark Lexstein.
I'll nominate Mark Lex, yes.
Second.
Mark
Yes.
Lexstein.
Ann Thurring,
Yes.
Raymond Mass,
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro,
Yes.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz.
Yes.
Okay, we also have a conflict for the board engineer.
I nominate me as conflict and I'll second.
Ann Thurring,
Yeah, yes.
Raymond Mass,
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro,
Yes.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz.
Yes.
Okay, we have Denise. Reaffirmation of the zoning board bylaws. Make a motion to,
I will reaffirm the zoning board bylaws. I'll move that.
a second. Just do it.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed or abstaining?
Okay, next we have the official newspaper, which is the Two River Times, Asbury Park Press, and the
Star Ledger.
Star Ledger.
Star Ledger.
Anybody?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
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 Any opposed, abstain?
Okay, and last we have the 2024 board meeting calendar. I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Seven.
Yes, correction to the calendar date for November, changing from November 8th to November 7th.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, we can have a motion to adopt that as amended.
Motion to adopt as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained?
Okay, next up, we have meeting minutes, December 7th, 2023.
I'll move to approve the December 7th minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained?
Okay, now we have a couple resolutions. Resolution of dismissal of 1 Berry Street.
Mr. Chairman, this was an application to construct a single-family home on an undersized lot, and you'll recall, we started the hearing, and then one of the neighbors said, I might be interested in purchasing this property, and one of the legal requirements in this particular type of case was that they had to reach out. They reached out and they sold the property to each other. So Kevin Asadi, the applicant's attorney, sent a letter saying the deal has been finalized. And so he asked to withdraw the application. So this is a dismissal without prejudice for those reasons. And it just basically allows us and allows Shauna to close the file on this and close our books and move on. Please.
Need to make a motion for resolution of dismissal.
Second.
Yeah, you can do a roll call.
Ann Thurring,
Yes.
Raymond Mass,
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro,
Yes.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz.
Yes.
Okay, we have a resolution of dismissal for 78 Bridge Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, you'll recall this was an application that came before us, I think it was last month. And the applicant basically indicated that he wanted board feedback and he got some board feedback. And the applicant's attorney had indicated that they're going to withdraw the application. So again, this dismisses the application without prejudice. Again, just allowing Shauna to close the books, return any escrow money, and we move on with life.
I'll make a motion to dismiss the resolution.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Ann Thorne,
Yes.
Raymond Mass.
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ben Euro,
Yes.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz.
Yes.
Okay, new business. We have 42 Monmouth Street. Up first.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, couple of things we'll just administratively take care of. First up, is there anyone here who had any questions or comments regarding the sufficiency of the notice they received? All right, we don't see any, and just for the record, the board secretary and Sean and I reviewed the notes and found everything to be in order, so it would be my humble opinion that we have jurisdiction to proceed tonight. And what we'll do is we will mark into the record what we as a board have before us with regard to this amended application. So A1 will be a red line markup of the parking plan, unsigned, undated, provided by Sal Alfieri on Sal Alfieri Esquire on November 29th, 2023. A2 is the site plan rendering prepared by Kennedy Consulting Engineers dated December 15th, 2023. A3 is the resolution adopted by this board in 2019, resolution number 2019-14. So we'll mark that into the record. And A4 is a communication, an email communication from Andrew Comey, the applicant's engineer, and it was to Ed Herman, our board engineer, dated December 7th, 2023. I think I have a copy of that for you, just, and basically, and I'm sorry, one last thing to mark into the record. A5 will be the T&M Associates Review memorandum dated January 3rd, 2024. And just to give a little bit of a spoiler alert, you'll recall it's going to be an application for an amendment. And there was some discussion, can we do it administratively, or should we have the applicant notice? And everyone basically suggested that under the circumstances, it was appropriate to renotice, so they've renoticed. And what we'll do is we'll swear in Mr. Ed Herman is our board engineer.
New board.
Relations. And Ed, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth to the best of your knowledge to help you God?
I do.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, this is Dante Alfieri. He's the applicant's attorney. And Dante, if you could just, for internal conflict of interest purposes, after you introduce yourself, if you could just state who your client is and if you know the principals of the client's name and things like that.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board, Dante.
Yeah, put that real close.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board, Dante Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is Phoenix of Madawan, Inc. They are the owner of 42 Monmouth Street. We're again seeking the board's approval for an amended major site plan approval. And Kevin, you want to know the members?
If you know, if you have them.
I don't.
Okay, so it's Phoenix of Madawan is the applicant. Is there any known issues or comments or questions or concerns about conflict? Okay, thank you.
So tonight we have two individuals.
You know what, just, you have to really speak into that mic.
Into the mic. So tonight we have two individuals who are going to provide testimony. We have Andrew Comey, who's going to provide engineering testimony and explain to the board what we are proposing tonight. And then we also have Christine Cafone, who's going to provide some planning testimony. As noted earlier, this application was previously approved in 2019, where it had two residential second floor and then two retail spaces on the first floor, one being a microbrewery. The notice we had provided that we were no longer going to pursue the microbrewery, but at this time, we're no longer going to remove that. My clients would still like to see if they can find a tenant. So the goal is a microbrewery to fit that out, and in the event they're unable to do so, we're going to propose a a use that would be permitted in the zone and meet the parking requirements as approved back in 2019. So without further ado, I'll have Mr. Comey come up and be sworn in.
All right, good evening. If you could just state your name and business address for the record, please.
Yes, good evening, Andrew Comey, COMI. Kennedy Consulting Engineers at 211 Maple Avenue, Red Bank, New Jersey.
All right, good evening and welcome. And you're testifying tonight in your capacity as a licensed engineer with all your certifications in place, correct?
Yes, correct.
And do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge to help you God?
I do.
All right, and just because we do have a bunch of new board members, why don't you just briefly send forth your credentials so everyone can get to know you?
I'm a graduate of Rutgers University in the field of civil engineering. I have 20 years experience in land development engineering projects, and I am a licensed New Jersey professional engineer. I believe I've testified before the zoning board here several times.
Thank you. Mr. Comey, could you orient the board to the site and just spell out what we are looking for?
Yes, you have just one exhibit, and it's the same plan that was submitted, but I do have small size versions of.
Great, so we'll mark that as A6, and what is A6?
It's entitled Site Plan Rendering, prepared by Kennedy Consulting Engineers. And it's dated 12/15/2023.
Okay, and that big board, this is just a little copy of it?
Correct. It's the same.
Thank you. Do it right in your face.
Just so everyone is aware, there is a background aerial image on this exhibit with a photo date of September 6th, 2023. Just to orient everyone, Monmouth Street is to the south of the site. The White Street parking lot is to the north. And to the east is lot 27. Excuse me, to the east is lot 25, or the Amboy Bank lot. And lot 27 is to the west, which is the Better Housekeeping property. Existing one-story building on the site is approximately 4,500 square feet. Access in and out of the site is from an access easement on the White Street parking lot, which continues on to lots 25, 26, and 27 with a 12-foot wide access easement. And you can see on the exhibit that's highlighted in red dashed lines. Essentially, the building in the proposed condition will be the same as what was approved in the 2019 approval. 4,500 square foot first floor and two bedroom apartments on the second floor, each approximately 2,250 square feet. As I said, the building square footage, floor area ratio, building height, everything will remain the same as far as the building. The changes really pertain to the parking area at the rear of the building, which I'll go through now. So as required on the plans, 8 parking spaces are provided on site, all of which will now be located we assign those, I'll say, non-conforming spaces to the residents. Also proposed is a refuse enclosure where there is none today. There was a dumpster that's out there just on the asphalt. So what we're proposing is a 10-foot by 18-foot area adjacent to the building for trash and recycling, which would have a concrete pad and a 6-foot solid vinyl fence on 3 sides. Similar to what was on the 2019. There will likely be 2 6-yard dumpsters, which are shown in green on the rendering, which would, one for trash and one for recycling, which would be rolled out into the drive aisle or for pickup. What we did was we placed the employee-owned parking space adjacent to the trash enclosure. That way, we can make sure that the trash enclosure will never be blocked by customer space of residents. So there'll be full control for when the trash collection is done. And trash pickup, and recycling pickup will be done by private hauler, likely 3 times per week, and of course, adjusted as needed. Essentially, those are the changes versus the prior 2019 plan.
We've reviewed T&M's letter of January 3rd, 2024. Are there any comments in here that we are unable to meet?
No, I think I touched on everything other than B2, talking about the turning movements of stall number 3 through 7. Yes, the turning movements would be essentially stall 3 through 7 would have to back out into that red 12-foot access easement for an exit to the east. I'll admit it's a little tight to fit. We had to fit all the design requirements, the 8 parking spaces, the trash enclosure, the ADA space, a 6-foot sidewalk into an area of 2,200 square feet. We feel that this design that was submitted was the best approach to meeting all of those goals. Yeah, essentially it's a little tight, but the good thing is there will be very high visibility in this parking area. There's no buildings or any blind turns blocking the line of sight. And the movements in and out of this area should be much less frequent than another more busy parking lot. So we feel that the site visibility is sufficient to allow adequate movement out of this parking.
Can you elaborate on that? Because the functionality of being in space 7 and 8.
Right.
Are they for different apartments built,
No.
what are they for? Because somebody just has to move their car?
7 and 8 would be assigned for one of the 2 apartments. Similarly, 5 and 6 would be for one of the apartments.
Okay, so, all right,
So essentially, if they have 2 cars, they'll have to move one temporarily,
okay,
allow the other.
okay, so they're.
Would be no different really than a residential use that would have a single wide driveway where you put 2 cars in the driveway. You have to figure out, okay, who's leaving first? I'm gonna put over that car.
Okay,
Unfortunately, it's Red Bank. We have tight spaces and sometimes you have to do the best you can. I had asked Mr. Comey to, assure us that the spaces would be, viable and usable. 24-foot aisle width is typical, so you should be able to back out. Most people have backup cameras now. My only concern is, space 8 could be a target for a door ding or 2 with somebody backing out of spaces 1, 2, or 3, perhaps, if they go straight back. But I think based on that conversation that we've had thus far and the testimony presented that, this does represent a reasonable approach. I do have one question for Mr. Comey on the western side, spaces 1, 2, and 3. There's no physical separation. It's one parked area, correct?
Correct.
So my only thought there, it may be prudent to have an end line striped in addition to the side stripes. That way you would sort of define where the end of the parking space is supposed to be and where theoretically that would be reasonably close to the presumptive property line. I note in your aerial that there's a car parked in what I'll call the alcove of the building adjacent to you on the west. So I think that's important that there be some delineation there, at least to to better define those spaces for everybody, including the neighbor. I'll just iterate that the parking, the easement that was shown in red, you can see very dimly underneath there. The parking stalls have been there for some period of time. There was some recent concerns raised by the easement through the White Street parking lot, which kind of caught my attention. And I said, we really ought to be attending to that. So I was the one, unfortunately, that precipitated this change. But I think it's ultimately better for the long-term viability of this property and so that we don't conflict with other people's rights to use that access easement.
And Ed, just for the record, is what is generating this, like you just said, the initially approved parking sort of was in the midst of an access easement, which is technically not really permitted, and that could have led to potential problems. So this is what they can do next to remove the parking spaces from that access easement.
That's correct, Mr. Kennedy.
Okay, you have any other things to present?
We have Mr. Phone to provide some planning testimony.
Need to speak in.
Does anybody have
There you
any
go.
questions for Mr. Comey before I call up our next witness?
Okay, anybody from the board have questions for Mr. Comey? Anybody from the public have questions for Mr. Comey? Okay, close that public portion.
Have Mr. Phone come up and provide some planning testimony, and then we will.
Okay. Very good. Good evening, Ms. Cafone. Good to see you. Happy New Year. If you could just state your name and business address.
Yes, of course. Good evening, Mr. Kennedy and members of the board. For the record, Christine Nazaro on the phone. Happy New Year. My business address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701. My licenses are still current and valid. I have testified here in Red Bank on many occasions, including the prior application that was approved by us.
All right, so I'll swear you in. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
Yes.
And for the record, you're testifying as a professional planner.
Yes. So this is a really straightforward application, and that's the reason that we were before the zoning board was because it needed D variance for FAR. So that's floor area ratio. So that means the floor area that we were proposing on the building is larger than what was required by the zone. Because we're not making any additional improvements to the building, the testimony I'm here to offer is that there's no changes from the testimony that was offered. This is an amended application, and that there's no, in my opinion, there's no change to the variance relief that was granted. As typical of your attorney, Mr. Kennedy, he did a voluminous resolution in conjunction with the last application. It was well over 200 pages. One of the things that was contained in that resolution that I would imagine would be carried forward is that the basement won't be utilized for anything other than storage. So that was one of the reasons that we testified in conjunction with the last application that the site could handle the FAR. So with that being said, I think the board could certainly approve the amended application with regards to the amended request for the site plan approval and the variance relief. As far as the parking, one of the things that was also in the resolution last time was that there be a provision in the lease that the residents would only have one vehicle. I think that would certainly be something that the board would look to continue forward as well to ensure that there be no substantial detriment rising. Again, there's really, the variance relief was already granted in conjunction with this application. And in my opinion, the minor modifications to the parking layout, there's no change in the floor area, there's no change in the parking. So there's no need to provide the full testimony, just for me to testify simply that there's no change to the relief that was granted.
Okay, anybody got any questions for? Well, anybody from the public have any questions for this witness? Okay, thank you.
And just one more cleanup matter.
You really need to speak up. We're not picking you up at all.
One more cleanup matter. I believe we require an extension of time, a 1-year extension. Is that correct, Mr. Kennedy?
I believe now, Shauna, you had indicated that they previously obtained an extension, but and remember, when we approved this in 2019, we have a shelf life within which the applicants need to obtain permits. And Shauna, they're here now, so they're gonna seek to extend the time frame for an additional 1-year period. That's the request.
Concerns about that? Any questions? Any comments from the public on that issue? Any? Okay. Somebody like to make a motion to approve this? Kevin, would you?
Sure, if the board is so inclined, you could vote to authorize amend the site plan as presented for those reasons. And I've taken the liberty of writing down some of the conditions that I thought might be appropriate. One would be obviously compliance with all the promises and commitments and the representations that the applicant's team made tonight. Compliance with the T&M Associates Review Memorandum dated January 3rd, 2024. And we previously approved it for a microbrewery use, and I think what we're saying now is it can be that same microbrewery use that was previously or initially approved, or another permitted use.
Yeah, I think the testimony, the notice said they wanted to withdraw the microbrewery, but the testimony here tonight was that they want to retain it. They think they might be able to still find that tenant or fit out. The whole idea was the permitted uses would be, in the prior resolution, there was commentary that it was supposed to be a pasta restaurant, which I understand is not a full kitchen sit-down scenario, perhaps a lighter duty restaurant, if you will. So the board had put in the resolution of approval previously that they would be allowed to have any permitted use up to and including a restaurant occupy that space. So that becomes important because typically if you have, a retail use versus a restaurant use, you would expect the restaurant use to have a heavier parking demand required. So as part of the testimony previously, that specific area was addressed. I presume it had something to do with the fact that they abut a multi-hundred parking stall from the municipal lot there. So that probably weighed into the consideration. And it was written that they wouldn't have to come back for additional approval if they wanted a restaurant, for instance. So in theory, the way it's written right now, if they wanted to do a restaurant for the entire floor, or they wanted to do two separate restaurants, or a brewery and a restaurant, so there's any number of options that they have. And the way it was written last time was that they would not have to come back to the board to get any further relief or permission, if you will.
And I think I heard Mr. Alfieri say that notwithstanding anything contained in the prior resolution to the contrary, if it's a permitted retail use with the same parking, you're totally fine. But that I think you said if it's whatever permitted use you're doing generates more than the retail parking, you would come back? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay. Is that okay with you,
I
Ed?
think that's fair, sure.
And then obviously, the conditions would be compliance with all the other terms and conditions of the prior approval from 2019, unless specifically obviated by this presentation tonight. Compliance with affordable housing rules and regulations and the affordable housing plan submitted to our affordable housing attorney if required. Development agreement if required. We're going to extend the time frame for 1 year, and we'll figure out what that time frame that'll be retroactively effective as necessary. Ed, you said we want to have them end-line striped for parking spaces 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
And then basement only is storage only. So, Mr. Chairman, if that is acceptable to the board, you can vote, and if it's not, you can vote.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve or deny this application
I'll approve it.
based on Mr. Kennedy?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Dan Torrey,
Yes.
Raymond Maris,
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Ed Euro,
Yes.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
and Anna Cruz.
Yes.
Okay, good luck.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, one last thing on this, for my discussion with the board. I have a resolution of approval, I prepared ahead of time. There's absolutely no requirement that we accept it. If you want, I can speed read it into the record, or if you want, we have it adopted at the next meeting. And I think our friend, the court reporter on the next application needs some time, to set up, so it might be, if the board inclined, it might.
As long as it's not one of your
Definitely not. Definitely, it's.
One of those robust.
So this would be basically, real briefly, that the applicant previously obtained approval for the separation of the existing ground floor retail space into two separate units, including a microbrewery use and another permitted use, and the construction of a second story containing two-bedroom units. And public hearings occurred on September 20th, 2018, and May 16th, 2019. The application was conditionally approved. A memorializing resolution was adopted. There's been no known appeal. And because of that easement issue and the parking in the easement issue and that situation, the applicant has had to come back seeking amended relief. And the amended relief, I won't repeat it, but was all what Mr. Comey had indicated. And basically, we're gonna say that based upon everything presented, this board is granting and approving the amended application. And the findings of fact include the following. The Red Bank Zoning Board of Adjustment retains jurisdiction to modify a prior approval from the Red Bank Zoning Board. Under the circumstances, it was not appropriate for the proposed changes to be administratively approved. Rather, under the circumstances, it was appropriate to consider the proposed modifications in the context of a public hearing with notice being provided in accordance with statutory ordinance requirements. If we didn't require that notice, interested members of the community may have been denied from having actual knowledge of the proposed amendments, and an administrative approval under these circumstances would likely have prevented any meaningful public review or participation had people wanted to meaningfully participate. It is feared that an administrative approval under these circumstances might not have been totally transparent and it would not have advanced the overall interests of the public or the Borough of Red Bank. So the applicant's representatives did publicly notice for this application the amendment, and we appreciate that. We'll talk about what those proposed amendments were. Those modifications were discussed during the public hearing process, and those amendments are not materially or dramatically going to change the nature of the board's initial approval. They're not materially going to change the overall nature of the initially approved plans. They're not going to materially change the architectural details of what was previously approved. They're not going to materially change the intensity or the density of what was previously approved. They're not changing the location of what was previously approved. We're not changing the height of what was previously approved. There's no new driveways, no new curb cuts presented. We're not changing the nature of the previously approved uses, but if the microbrewery use is not utilized, there will be another permitted use. By this approval, we're not injecting any new non-conforming use. Again, let's see. Approval of this amended application is not going to materially change the number of off-street parking spaces associated with the prior approval. It's not going to materially change the nature of the variance relief associated with the prior approval. It's not going to change the number of off-street parking spaces specifically dedicated to the residential occupants in the prior approval. There's no new variances created. You're not exacerbating any previously granted variances. We're not changing the previously approved floor area ratio. We're not changing the number of overall units. It's not changing the lighting details. We're not changing illumination levels. We're not changing garbage and recycling. It's materially changing garbage and recycling details. Not changing landscaping. Not materially changing the overall appearance of the development. And approval of the within application for the amended proposal will not cause substantial detriment to the public good. We're going to extend that the period of time for the permits for 1 year. And let's see, approval of this application in conjunction with the conditions noted will not impede the intent or purposes of the borough's master plan. And the approval of this amended application will have no negative impact on adjoining properties. And also, the board hereby reaffirms and reiterates all the findings of fact and conditions associated with the initial approval. And I won't repeat the conditions again, but Mr. Chairman, if that's acceptable, we can adopt that resolution. But again, no requirement that we do that, totally up to the board.
Okay, somebody would like to make a motion to approve that resolution? I will.
Second.
A little bit of clarity. You said two bedrooms. In I think the first paragraph.
Yes, I
In
think.
your speed, I think you just said 2 bedrooms.
Oh, I'm sorry.
2 bedroom apartment.
Two bedroom units.
Two bedroom units.
Yes.
Okay.
I love the fact that you're paying attention.
Only the first minute.
Roll call.
Ann Torrey,
Yes.
Raymond Mass.
Yes.
Eileen Hogan.
Yes.
Ben Euro,
Yes.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
Anna Cruz.
Yes.
Okay, good luck.
Have a good night.
Okay, next up, we have 87 Riverside Avenue, Outfront Media LLC.
Right. Mr. Chairman, as the applicant's team comes forward, we do have a couple of preliminary procedural things that we need to address. This is Jennifer Krimko. She is the applicant's attorney. Jennifer, can I just take a few minutes to get us all up to speed procedurally? Okay. So what we're gonna do is the applicant was here for a public hearing, which started on, I think it was February 2nd, 2023. And as I recall, Jennifer, we had a couple hour or two of testimony. And after some testimony and evidence was presented and we had some board questions and some public questions and comments, the matter was adjourned with the official consent of the applicant and no further public notice was required. Now, the application was thereafter adjourned at the applicant's request on a number of occasions and always with the consent of the applicant's legal representatives. And ultimately, after a number of continuations, Shauna basically said, you know, we can continue this, but you're gonna have to renotice. And Ms. Krimko, on behalf of the applicant, said, of course we will. So that's always appreciated. Now, recently, the applicant's team caused the plans to be revised and they were scheduled for tonight, January 4th, 2024. Now, I previously spoke with Ms. Krimko and Shauna, I think, communicated with her as well. And we said, hey, are you gonna start over? What's your plan? And if you know, you might want to start over just because the first hearing was so long ago and in February, and the plans have been revised, and we had a high level of composition, change of the composition on the board with the new form of government. The board was technically reconstituted, and you know, what people have forgotten, even if they were here, from so many months ago. So Ms. Krimko, as I recall, pretty much said, I don't want to start over. Let's do this a continuation. So we're here tonight as a continuation, and continuations are very common, not necessarily 11 months later, but generally speaking, we always carry an adjourn. So under New Jersey law, if a board member was not present for the February 2nd, 2023 meeting, the board members cannot vote on an application unless they certify on paper and on the record that they reviewed the tape for the transcripts of the prior meeting. And it's not just the minutes, it's actually tape or CD of the meeting. And P.S., Mr. Chairman, that law about absent members even applies to some of our new friends who were not even on the board at the time of February of 2023. So Shauna, our Director of Community Development, was good enough to make the tape and CD available for board members, including some board members who were just not here, board members, but were not present on February 2nd, and even the board members who were not even board members. So anyway, so for the record-keeping purposes, we should make sure we're all on the same page as to which board members can vote tonight if we get to a vote tonight. And incidentally, if there is a board member here tonight who was not here on February 2nd, 2003, or is otherwise not eligible to vote tonight, that board member can still participate tonight, ask questions, make comments, make statements, but they just can't vote tonight if there turns out to be a vote tonight. And those specific board members could simply listen to the tapes in the future and come back at that point. So Shauna, just for the record, we can coordinate, and this is important for Ms. Krimko too, who's all here tonight and who can participate. So I have a number of.
Point of correction before I speak, for the record, Jennifer Krimko on behalf of the applicant. We also did provide the printed transcript, which I believe would have been available as well. And if there are, and if we don't include tonight, there are board members that want to review that, we do have that as well.
Awesome.
Yes, we do have the electronic and the hard copies.
Awesome. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we are starting, Jennifer, my notes or Shauna say that we begin at B2. So I'm gonna mark as B2 is a certification from board member Ann Torrey that she reviewed the tapes of that February 2nd, 2023 meeting. So that's going to be B2. And then B3 will be certification, written certification here from Paul Pagno that he reviewed the tapes of that February 2nd, 2023 meeting. And then B4 is going to be the written certification of huge board member Eugene Horowitz that he listened to the tape of the February 2nd, 2023 meeting. That's B4. And then B5 is going to be the certification of board member Ben Euro that he reviewed or listened to the tape of that February 2nd, 2023 meeting. So we'll give those to our friend Elena. And so now just Shauna, math not being my strong suit, how many eligible people do we have here tonight? All right.
Yeah, and I
So-
just for the record, I have in my notes that Chair Mass was here. Eileen Hogan and Sharon Lee were also present at the February meeting, so that's.
Okay, so, and incidentally, a big shout out to all of our board members who were able to listen to the tapes, because listening to tapes, it's not always easy, it's not always fun, and it is a time commitment, but it is important. Particularly on those applications which are continued and carried, and also, for the record, Sean and I give a double shout out or a double star or a double check plus to the board members who listened, who weren't even board members at the time. That definitely is very nice and very important, and it definitely evidences a strong and impressive commitment to the borough and to the board, to the public and to the applicant. And finally, just for those who listen to the tapes, you can now see why Mr. Chairman with our friend Dante Alfieri there kept saying, speak into the mic, because when you listen to the tapes, you'll see sometimes that people turn away, you don't hear them, or if there's multiple conversations going on or sidebars or plans are being rustled into the mic, and that compromises the efficiency of the tape. So you, at listening to the tapes, you sort of see that. Anyway, back to the issue at hand. So Shauna, we're all good tonight, and let's see. We then, let's see, I know this procedural history is sort of long, but it's important because we need to be clear and we want the public to understand. And if there is ever litigation, we want the record to be totally clear. And remember, we as a zoning board are a quasi judicial agency, so we sort of have to act like a court. So this is a good thing. And on top of everything else, it's the right thing to do. You all as a board are very thorough, very deliberative, and this is why we do this. So now, just a couple other things to address real quickly. Tonight, and I don't want to steal Ms. Krimko's thunder, and I will not, but it's
Stole my thunder with regard to thanking and complimenting the board members for listening to the tape, but go ahead, let's see what else you can take from me.
great minds think alike. So this is a little bit of a complex and nuanced application. And I'm not going to go into the details, but at first glance, you might think, hey, it's a pretty straightforward application. There's an existing billboard and they want a new billboard. And you would think maybe after you hearing the testimony and evidence, you're gonna either yes, you approve it, or yes, you approve it with conditions, or you deny it. But upon further review, some legally complex matters at hand. There's many ordinance provisions, and Ms. Krimko will talk about that. There's some state regulations at play. There's some constitutional and free speech issues, and it's very very nuanced. And Mr. Chairman, nuanced is, I think, a fancy way of saying complicated. So basically, it's just I think at the very beginning, back before February, Jennifer and I had a conversation, which we basically ended up, she was good enough to renotice because there was so much issues. And Shauna and Ed Herman and Jennifer and I had a conversation, and just won't bore you with the details, but we all started positions A, B, C, D. By the middle of the conversation, I had taken Jennifer's position, she took Ed's, and took Shauna's, and anyway, so a lot of issues that need to be addressed. So it's just some procedurally nuanced issues, and I just want to advert the board of that. And some of those issues are going to be in very, very simplistic terms. Is site plan approval required? Is this a D1 use variance? Is it a D2 variance for an expansion of a non-conforming use? Is bulk variances required? Is site plan required? Is this a principal use? Is it a principal structure? Is it accessory use, an accessory structure? Lots of questions. So we're gonna have to get into that. And I was speaking with the councilman in the back earlier when I walked into the meeting. If you're a zoning geek or a zoning enthusiast, this is your night, because there's a lot of complicated issues there.
We ever get started.
So, and also,
Kevin and I go way back 25 years, so.
absolutely. And the other thing is, it's important because all those different combinations of relief require different standards. And so we want the record to be straight, again, in the event of this litigation. So that's the basis of why we come here tonight. And just one more continual thing is one of the things that Jennifer Krimko did very impressively was she put together a super intense notice. And she basically said, hey, I want an interpretation as to this issue. I want an interpretation as to this issue, interpretation as to this issue. And so that's what you're going to hear about tonight. And you will recall that an interpretation is something that's very unique and specific to this board. The New Jersey Municipal Land Use Law says if someone wants an interpretation of an ordinance, they come to this board. Mr. Chairman, we don't have too many interpretations, but you'll recall a couple months ago, we had the massage school application, and it sort of was an appeal of Donna's decision, but it sort of morphed into an interpretation. So anyway, that's, and again, many nuances, and I just want to point out one other thing. We always hear the applicant's attorney and the objector's attorney and the planners always say, hey, there's no precedent with this decision. And if you approve one barbershop, that doesn't mean you have to approve another barbershop. And if you deny one residential apartment complex, you don't have to deny another one. Because what everyone says, and it's always correct, is that each individual application will rise or fall on its own merit. However, there's a little bit of a caveat when we're talking about an interpretation. If you give ultimately an interpretation of A or B or C, there will be precedential effect to that. So Shauna, if we give just like with that massage school, we gave an interpretation essentially, and you can now rely on that for future applications.
Yes.
So anyway, nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to, until the board or the borough council will change the ordinance. So anyway, that's what we're gonna hear a lot about tonight. And basically, we're gonna let the application unfold. And now we're getting into the heart of the matter. So first up, Jennifer Krimko issued a notice, public notice. And is there anyone here who had any questions or comments regarding the sufficiency of the notice? This is not the time to say, I like the application or I don't, just if anyone had any questions on the notice. All right, I don't see any. The board secretary and Sean and I reviewed the notice and found everything to be in order. So it'd be my humble opinion that we have jurisdiction to proceed tonight. And I'll just, for the record, because the notice was so thorough and is going to be a format, an outline for much of the hearing, I'm going to enter the notice as A18 is what I had it, Jennifer, starting with.
That's correct.
Okay, and now, just as I promise my list is getting short, just for internal conflict purposes. Jennifer, if you can just state whether the owner's name and I know there's a document somewhere, and the client's name and the principals, just so we can, I know we did this at the very beginning.
We did it at the beginning and it's saying, first of all, I don't think it's the owner. I think it's just the applicant under the municipal land use law. The applicant is Outfront Media LLC. It's a publicly traded company. There are no members or entities that own 10% or more.
Okay, so does anyone, now that we say that, because you never know when you're dealing with a corporation or an LLC, and because there are so many new board members, I did want to go over that again. Is there anyone here on the board who has any questions or comments about conflicts or potential conflicts? Seeing none. Okay, and so now what we'll do is we'll mark into evidence what we have as a board that's been submitted. So I'm going to say, Alini, what did I just say?
18 was the notice.
Okay, so I'm gonna start off with A19 is going to be the bulk variance plan prepared by Dynamic Engineering, and that's dated May 4th, 2022. Last revised December 7th, 2023, and that's 4 sheets. A20 is a billboard location exhibit prepared by Dynamic Engineering, dated December 7th, 2023, 1 sheet. A21 is a narrow view technology exhibit prepared by Dynamic Engineering, dated December 7th, 2023, 1 sheet. A22 is a cover letter or a narrative from Jennifer Krimko to Shauna, and she was explaining some of those changes, and that was dated December 18th, 2023. So we'll mark that, and then we're gonna mark as B, what am I up to, Alina?
6.
B6?
Oh,
Okay, so B6 is gonna be the T&M Associates Review Memorandum dated January 4th, 2024. And I think, at least my recollection is that Ed's letter sort of followed the format to an extent of Jennifer's notice. And also, Shauna, I see here we have a review memo from Red Bank River Center. I'll mark that into the record?
The applicant was not afforded a copy.
I think it just came out. So do we have an extra copy for Jennifer?
I have enough.
Okay. So we're gonna mark this as B7, and this is Red Bank River Center. And Jennifer, it was on our desk when we came in tonight, so I think it's just hot off the presses. It's Red Bank River Center, and that's dated January 4th, 2024. You have another extra copy? If you do, we can just give it to Shauna, Jennifer's clients can read that too as we go forward. Okay,
I imagine it's somewhat similar to the last one.
Okay. So now, for the witnesses, let's see, we're going to swear in Ed Herman, our board engineer. And we're also going to swear in Shauna Ebanks, our director of planning and zoning. So Ed and Shauna, if you could just raise your right hands. You both swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide it, will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, to help you God.
I do.
Okay, and then Shauna, just for the record, your qualifications for the record, you're a professional planner?
Yes, I am AICP.
Okay, and Ed Herman, you're testifying in your capacity as professional engineer with some planning certifications?
I do hold a professional planner's license in the state of New Jersey.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, I have a big stop sign here saying stop, so that's the end of my speech. So Jennifer, thank you for indulging me in that. I just wanted to set the record straight, procedural. Hope I didn't derail your proceedings, but Happy New Year and welcome.
Thank you. And again, for the record, Jennifer Krimko from Ansel Herman Aaron here, but the applicant. Does anybody need a break? Thank you. And I tease Kevin, but honestly, he is the most thorough board attorney that I know, and that's certainly why you've reappointed him here year after year after year. I want to thank the board members, as I said, who were not here at the prior meeting. Listening to the tape, it can not only be boring, but it can also be somewhat confusing without having the benefit of seeing people here. I'm hoping that I can clarify everything as we go through it tonight. So I'm going to just give you some background of what happened at the last meeting by way of summary, what we're proposing tonight, what we intend to present to you tonight. I do have more exhibits. I would like to wait as we go through my witnesses to hand them out. So when we appeared back in February of 2023, as Kevin said, we were seeking several interpretations, and ultimately, depending on the interpretations that the board made, an approval for the modernization of an existing non-conforming static billboard sign. When I say static, that just means not digital. It's put on there, it's stuck on there, it stays there for a while until trucks come and remove it. On the property, as you all know, is 187 Riverside Avenue, block 4.01, lots 1 and 2. The original submission was to construct a 40-foot tall structure with a sign face of 454.7 square feet of sign message to modernize the existing 22-foot tall, 480 square foot static billboard. The proposal was for that digital billboard to operate 24 hours a day. You first heard testimony from John Antal, the general manager for the New Jersey Market Outcome Media LLC. He provided background on the company as well as the billboards existing in Red Bank today. He further explained to the board that there's no way to modernize the technology or lack of technology of a static billboard to convert it to a digital billboard without replacing the structure that holds it with steel supports. So it does require a total replacement that's unlike other types of uses that are not a digital enhancement or a modernization. He also explained that the original existing billboard that dated back to the 60s was lined up with the 2 lanes that Cooper's Bridge used to be many years ago. And now that the bridge is 4 lanes, as part of our modernization, we wanted to slightly relocate it to center it on those 4 lanes the same way it was previously centered on the 2 lanes for the reconfigured highway. Mr. Antal went on to talk about the state law that regulates billboards in New Jersey, as implemented by the New Jersey Department of Transportation, or as a lot of people call DOT. And the digital billboard is not permitted to have any motion, animation, waving, appearance of motion in any way. The images will change instantaneously and seamlessly every 8 seconds. And while there may not be a digital billboard today at Red Bank, we're all familiar with digital billboards up and down Route 35, with ones in Neptune City, Ocean Township, Eatontown, all along Route 35. Now, there were questions about, well, what's the benefit to the applicant to have this? Won't it enhance financially? And there was a question with regard to, well, how much? And we can stipulate that a digital billboard will generate approximately on average, depending on the location and how popular it is, about 3 times that which a static billboard. You know, it was a question at the last meeting. We did not have the number off the top of our head, so we'll offer that. But what I will tell you is, and what's more important to you for purposes of considering this application, whether it be for bulk variance or use variance, is that the benefits of a digital billboard versus a static are much greater than the financial benefit to the owner of the billboard. There are many public benefits that come with a digital billboard versus a static billboard. First, as you heard from Mr. Antal, there's free use to municipal, county, and state agencies for emergency messaging, like evacuation notices or other public safety messages. As was testified, as is typically the case with out-front billboards, there is free use to the borough in which it's located to display non-emergency municipal messages and announcements when space is available, meaning when it's not already been purchased by advertisers. There is clearly a need for this in Red Bank, as we all know, because I moved an exhibit into the record as A15, which were photos of the borough's somewhat rudimentary public messaging temporary service sitting on our lot, the same lot that we're seeking approval for today. But more than the community public benefit, there's also a benefit to the businesses within the borough of Red Bank and the surrounding area. There was a question at the original meeting as to, well, how much of it's local? And one of the exhibits I'm going to present to you is the list of 32 local businesses, and local means New Jersey-based businesses that have advertised on the Outfront billboard since 2022. Of those, at least 1/3 have a physical presence in Red Bank. And we're going to hand that out and discuss it. And what the digital billboard does, it gives the ability for smaller businesses to get a piece of the digital billboard pie, so to speak, or a slice of the pizza, as we metaphorically described it at the last meeting. Due to the cost of constructing the static billboard message, the work involved with placement and replacement of the face, Most static billboard ads stay up for longer periods of times and are therefore expensive, both for construction and putting up and replacing them, but also for rental. And that makes them unachievable by small or startup local businesses. But as you heard from the testimony of Mr. Antal at the last meeting, the digital billboard allows these local and smaller businesses to purchase an 8-second ad at a much lower price than the monthly static billboard rental, thereby opening up the billboard advertising to a much wider array of these local, smaller businesses. Equally as importantly, the messaging on a digital billboard can be timely and relevant as to the time of day, the weather conditions, or conditions unique to a business, such as a grand opening, sale, or other special event, or even a car wash being closed because of the inclement weather. This is impossible to do with a static billboard. After John Antal testified, we had Tiago Duarte from Dynamic Engineering who went through the exhibits and the technical aspects of the proposal, and he answered questions from the board and the public. Well, we heard a lot of concerns of the then sitting board and the 3 board members who are here tonight. And we heard a lot of concerns from the public, and I apologize for the long delay, but there was quite a bit of work that had to be done in order to get us back here tonight with the application that's before you. And I'm happy to be back nearly a year later with a very different proposal. And as was outlined in my letter that Kevin moved into evidence, we're reducing the proposed height from 40 feet, which was originally submitted, to 27 feet. That's only 5 feet taller than the existing static billboard that's on the property. And it's similar in height, as you'll see from the exhibits, as to the gas station sign that exists on the property, which we're proposing to remove. The reduction in
Sorry, I missed that. Similar in size to the what?
the gas station, the existing gas station sign on the property.
Right.
There is an exhibit with a photo that I've got for you. Now, you're gonna hear when we get through testimony that there is a distinction between a non-conforming structure and a non-conforming use. And that's from a planning perspective and from a legal perspective. Now, and I'm not gonna go into it at a great at the original meeting. Your ordinance simply defines billboard by its size. Any sign that is over 200 square feet is by definition a billboard in your town. So if a restaurant had a 201 square foot sign, it would be a billboard. So under your ordinance, you define a billboard purely by sign, by size, excuse me. And typically, as you're gonna hear from our planner, when you categorize a requirement by size, by distance, by a number, a quantifiable number, that is a bulk standard. Meaning you can't have a sign more than 100 square feet, you can't have a house bigger than 5,000 square feet. So the size is not the use. So we have to look at what the intention was of the ordinance and what the actual use is. And as you heard from the definitions that were described in the record at the last meeting, it's taken right from the state statute. Really, the use is a message that is advertising a use that is off premises. So the distinction of what we have here is what's the use versus what's the structure. And when we look at what the use is, that's not permitted, and that is an off-premise advertising. You have to look at, well, how do you judge the intensity of that use? Well, the size of the same way that the number of bedrooms would describe the intensity of a multifamily dwelling or residential dwelling, the size of the message would typically be how you would describe the intensity of that message. And in this case, we are actually reducing that non-conforming use or the non-conforming off-premise message down from the existing 480 square feet to proposed 380 square feet. So while there was discussion about expanding a non-conforming use, as you're going to hear, it's the applicant's position that we're not expanding the non-conforming use, we're actually reducing the non-conforming use. We recognize we're changing the structure, but there's a distinct distinction between the type of relief needed for a non-conforming use versus a non-conforming structure, and that is the difference between a D variance or a C variance. We'll get into it in great detail. I just want to put that in your mind because it's going to be discussed throughout the meeting. I think the most significant of the changes that the applicant is offering tonight as part of this amended application is we are proposing that if the board were to approve the modernization or the conversion of this pre-existing non-conforming billboard use to a digital billboard, Outfront would commit as a condition of approval to remove its static billboards in permanence from 2 locations in Red Bank. And as you're going to see on the exhibit that we presented to, that we will be actually it was marked in, we did submit it in advance, I apologize. That was marked into evidence. That represents 6 sign faces. So while it is on 2 structures, so it's 2 non-conforming structures, each structure has double faced, and there's 3 faces on each one for a total of 6 total signs or 6 total non-conforming uses that we're proposing will be eliminated. So when we talk about this application expanding a non-conforming use, even if our sign itself was staying the same size, I think arguably we could say that generally speaking, we are reducing overall the non-conforming use of billboards in Red Bank. Additionally, as you're going to hear, we're proposing and committing, God bless you,
Thank you.
to implementing narrow view technology with this proposed billboard. And what that does is, and you'll see on the exhibit that was looked in, it drastically limits the sign view area or the angle from which the message can be seen. There were a lot of questions and comments about who's going to see it, who it's going to disrupt, particularly the residential neighbors. And as you're going to see, that's going to have a drastic mitigation. The concessions that I just stated were all included in my submission of December 18th. But after consulting with my client and reconsidering the plans and comments from Mr. Herman, we're prepared to actually offer 2 more concessions that we would agree to as conditions of approval if the board were to vote favorably. The first is we would agree to limit the use of the sign from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And what that means is that the digital message will be turned off during the nighttime hours pursuant to the ordinance, and it would eliminate the variance as it relates to the operation of lighted sign from the hours of 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I think that also addresses a lot of the concerns the neighbors had about the potential of the sign being visible to them at night when they were trying to sleep. And then I see that the former board chair is no longer on the board, but one of the questions that she drilled down on pretty hard at the meeting was, well, are we guaranteed that we're going to get to use public service messaging for non-emergency, or is it, you know, just when you have extra space, and how do we know you won't have extra space? Well, Outfront is committed to guarantee to the borough, if this is approved, the use of the sign for non-emergency municipal messages at a rate of 8 seconds every 1 minute based on a 64 second minute. What does that mean realistically? Well, for the 16-hour operating period from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., that means that 12.5% of the billboard's operating time will be donated for free to the borough for its use. That equals 120 minutes of free billboard use a day, every day that it's in operation. So with that setting the stage and the framework of what we're actually here for tonight, I just want to let you know that instead of Tiago following up, you're going to hear from his colleague, Dan Doherty. Tiago's wife is due to have a baby any moment. It may even be happening now. So as much as he wanted to be here with you tonight, I think he made the right decision by staying home with his wife just in case. Dan will go over the new proposed plan. He'll explain the narrow view technology, and I'll move into some of the other exhibits before he goes on. And then we'll present the testimony of professional planner who you just heard, Christine Capone. What I'm proposing to do is she's going to testify as to each of the questions for interpretation from a planning perspective. But then she's going to offer the planning support for each variance regardless of what you interpret. And the reason we do that is that even if the board interprets we only need a C1 variance, and then we testify for the C1 variance and you grant it, a neighbor or some other objector could appeal it. So we want to make sure that should this go to court, even if we come to an amicable resolution between the board and the applicant, that we've covered all of our bases, so any reviewing court would have the ability to understand what the board's decision was in all accounts. So with that almost as long as Kevin's opening, what I'd like to do is start by introducing Dan Doherty, have him sworn. And then once he's sworn, I'll move some additional items into evidence. I do have handouts for everybody and extras for the public.
Perfect. All right, good evening. If you could just state your name and spell your last name, please.
Daniel Doherty, Dougherty, with Dynamic Engineering Consultants.
And you gotta speak into the mic.
Speak real close.
All right, so Daniel, Dougherty,
Correct.
and business address?
1904 Main Street, Lakeville, New Jersey.
Okay, if you could just raise your right hand, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
Yes, I do.
And just for the record, you're testifying tonight in your capacity as?
Professional engineer.
Thank you.
If your license is in good standing and you've been accepted as an expert in front of, I don't know about this board, but.
Yeah, I've been accepted as a witness before the planning board of Red Bank, and then also, between upwards of 100 other boards throughout New Jersey.
We'd submit a message. Okay, so and before we get started on this testimony, at the prior meeting, we moved in as 813 Emergency Services Protocol B. And what that was the agreement that we would offer to the town as it relates to the non-emergency use of the sign. And what we did was there was a printing error with that. So one, to clarify the printing error, and two, to update it to provide for the 120 minutes of use between 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. I'd like to move in as 823, a revised protocol B, which is tailored specific to the proffer that I gave at the beginning with regard to what we would offer the town.
Okay,
If it's okay, I'll hand one to Mr. Euro and
Thank you.
pass one. And there are extras for the public. Page 24 is a list of local, and by local, as I indicated before, New Jersey advertisers on out front billboards since 2022.
I'm sorry, so it's a list of local New Jersey businesses who have advertised with
Advertised in one Red Bank billboards owned by Outfront.
Okay, is there a date on that or?
No, there is not.
Okay,
And you'll notice that we included Wawa as a local business. Well, its headquarters are in Pennsylvania because there's an actual physical location at Red Bank. We didn't keep that in there. A25 is a photo of the existing site, and what it does show you in the previous one that we gave you, it just had a picture of the town's temporary signage which they placed on the property. This one shows it in the context of the existing two signs, and I think it gives the board a good view of what's existing there on the property today. So this is A25.
you know offhand who took that picture?
Yeah, I think it might have, I think it was a representative of Outfront.
Thank you. And so Jennifer, just for the record keeping purposes, you can basically comfortably say that that's an accurate depiction.
Yes.
Okay.
I think right well local to Red Bank, they found that that's an accurate depiction. A26. If you'd like me to slow down, I can, Kevin. Just-
I'm good, thanks.
826 is a two-page exhibit, and it shows the 6 billboard faces that are proposed to be removed. I know that we submitted an exhibit which showed the location and a small version of it. This, I think, will help familiarize everybody a little bit more. That's 826. Almost done. Unlike Kevin, I really am almost done. And then lastly, A27. You're gonna ask me, so I'm gonna count. A27 is a 13-page packet prepared by Outfront, photos taken by Dynamic Engineering. And it's similar to what we moved into evidence at the last meeting. Forget which one it was. Maybe it was A16, or A15, and what it is, it's photos of existing conditions and then an accurate, as was described by Mr. Antoff, computer generation based on a crane test that was given of what the sign would look like to scale if approved. So that would be A27.
All right, so say the last part again. It's a depiction of,
It's a 13-page packet, which we're gonna walk through, so it's photos of the existing conditions and the proposed conditions as computer generated to scale.
so what the sign will look like.
Correct.
Good exercise today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's some slide. Oh, sorry. So with that. I'm going to turn this over to Dan and have him walk through the application from a technical perspective with regard to what we're proposing, as well as the narrow view technology, and then we'll take a moment to go through the exhibits with him to better understand visually what we're gonna have.
So, as Ms. Krimko had indicated, we made some changes to the code. We're, primarily, there's three elements of the sign itself that we're changing. We're reducing the size of the sign, the square footage of the sign. We're reducing the height of the sign. And we're making a minor modification to the location of the sign or the position of the sign on site. That's really just a reflection of the change in the size of the dimensions of the sign. So I'll go through the size first. The existing billboard's 480 square feet, as Mr. Krimko had indicated in the previous testimony from my partner, Tiago. Previously proposed sign was 454 square feet, and we've now reduced that to 380 square feet. So that's about a 20.8% reduction from the existing sign, and about a 16.5% reduction from what we previously proposed. The dimensions of the sign.
Let me just correct you, I don't think that's accurate. I think you mean it's the 23% reduction in height from what was previously proposed and 16% in area from what was previously proposed.
Well, no, it's 20.8 in area reduction percentage from the existing sign and 16% in area reduction from what we had previously proposed. So,
Okay.
So from 480 down to 380 is a 20.8% reduction, and from 454 down to 380 is 16.4%. The dimensions of the sign are about 10.5 feet high by 30.
Sorry, say it again. And then
10.5 feet high, 10.49 feet high.
And when you say the sign, Dan, you mean the sign face that we're talking about?
That's correct.
The digital face itself.
That's correct. And that's 10.49 feet high by 36.22 feet wide.
36.22 feet wide.
Yes, and you'll see on our plan, it's actually represented in some very minute fractions that comes straight from the sign manufacturer. So I'm just giving you that's what I'm thinking.
And that's also, Kevin, that is in my letter that I submitted.
Perfect.
The height of the sign was previously proposed at 40 feet, and we're reducing that now to 27 feet. That's the height of the sign to the top of the sign. So that's a 32.5% reduction, about a third reduction in the height of the sign from 30 down to 27. And then the position of the sign changes slightly. it's not really an intent for us to change the position of the sign. It's a matter of the sign having gotten smaller in width. That creates an increase in the front yard setback to Bridge Avenue. So where the Bridge Avenue setback was previously 25 feet from the side of the sign, the western side of the sign, the Bridge Avenue frontage, that's now 29 feet because the sign has shrunk in that direction. Same setback, we still have the same setback to Riverside Drive, that's 93.4 feet. Same setback to the property to the rear, about 6 feet, and that's from the back of our structure.
I'm sorry, just 93.4. The setback to which road?
Riverside.
Riverside. And then the 0.6 foot setback to the rear structure, lot 3, rear.
And that's to the back of the pole that is our support.
That's correct,
What is the setback to the back of the sign face?
1.6 feet. And under existing conditions, that setback from that structure, the existing structure is only 0.1, so we're actually increasing the setback. And there's also a small change to our east yard setback. It's really just, again, a matter of dimensional. It's changing by about 0.6 feet. So to our east, to lot 24.01, previously we were 65.6 feet. Now we're an even 65. And there's no relief there.
And Dan, one more thing, we're not all, and I know it's up by a minute amount, but it still is in increase in setback as opposed to decrease. Not only are we increasing the setback of the pole, but there's currently 5 poles that the sign sits on, and as was the testimony to the last one, reducing that down to 1. So the actual structures at ground level that will have any impact on the neighbor is going from 5 to 1 and being moved further away.
That's correct. So there's less structure on the bottom of the sign and the ground on the site in the proposed conditions than there is existing. That's really it for the numerical changes to what we're proposing for this time. I'd like to introduce the narrow view technology information that was submitted as an exhibit to the application.
That's H21, yes.
So Jennifer, let's, that document, that map, we already have that.
That's the narrow view exhibit that you
Got it.
moved in as H21.
Thank you.
Well, all of this isn't different. It's not a change in the size of the sign that we're proposing, but it's actually a change in the type of LED that's being utilized on the sign. It's a change from what was given in previous testimony last February, and that's why it's important. So previously, Mr. Duarte had given you testimony that there's a view shed of the sign, LED as it can be viewed from the sign face. That's measured in degrees from being straight out from each LED module. So as the LED pointing out in a straight direction, it can be visible under the previous proposal, 60 degrees to either side. So approximately 120 degrees from the direction that the sign is pointing. There's a cone of vision that's approximately 120 degrees. And that's the testimony that Mr. Duarte gave you previously. He had an exhibit to that same effect where it showed the 260-degree mounts adding up to about 120 degrees. Outfront's recently been able to modify their module, and they actually provide louvers, vertical louvers within those modules now that are larger than the previous to further shrink that cone of vision. So you get less spillage of the light out to either side.
Well, I just want to it's not spillage of the light, it's less light visible.
That's correct. Less ability to be able to view the LED element from the side of center.
And now if you're outside of that in the previous 120 degrees and propose the cone we're proposing now, you essentially won't see a digital message, you won't see the LED lights, you'll just see a black screen.
That's correct. And you see the plastic louvers that are incorporated into the design. You don't see any light source. So rather than seeing light source, you just see.
Now, what is the degree of vision from the front of the sign?
So that angle's been reduced from 60 degrees to 25 degrees. So from the center of the LED as it faces out to the public or to the roadway, wherever it's directed, Rather than seeing a full swing of 60 degrees to the left and 60 degrees to the right, you're seeing only 25 degrees to the left and 25 degrees to the right.
And on the exhibit that you presented, you have a hatched area, the two triangles. Those are the areas that previously would have been visible and no longer will be.
That's exactly right. Those hatched areas that you see on the exhibit would have been locations where you could be able to view the LED lighting element from the west side, in this case, the east side of the sign, northwest and northeast side of the sign. That now will not be able to see that lighting element. The only locations where you'll see the lighting element is in that clear unshaded portion in the middle that points straight up on this site, north, across the river and across the bridge. So that represents over a 40% reduction in that whole cone of vision from 120 to approximately 120 degrees down to 50 degrees.
Okay, and at the last meeting, there was testimony from Mr. Montel about what billboards we have in town today. Rather than give you a list with addresses, which I believe was originally requested, you actually prepared a billboard location exhibit, which has a corresponding chart with regard to the DOT permitting as for each of those. So if you could just explain first to the board, you know, what each of the numbers mean and what that chart means.
So Outfront operates 14 sites throughout Red Bank that have copy and advertising on it to billboards. One of those sites being our site. That's listed as number 14 on our site, and bottom of those on the bottom of. So what we've indicated is in a circle, a colored circle with a number in the middle. Is each of those locations to count on that same exhibit that you have?
We
There
don't
are-
have it. I don't have that.
It's this, it was submitted as part of a.
It was in previous.
You have an electronic one. I apologize, but I know that you guys didn't have the hard copies. I would have printed them by 17.
And what exhibit number is it?
This was exhibit 820.
I'll just run through really quickly a summary. They're spread throughout town. There's approximately 5 signs in the vicinity of Front Street and the railroad, Front Street and Shrewsbury Avenue. Okay, that's just a general approximation. Idea what you can do. Our sign that's on the proposed site. And there's 5 or 6 signs that are located in the southern half of town, between the center of town and Newman Springs Road. I think there's one sign that's located up in the northeast part of town.
And then in red, you have sign number 10 and 12. And those are the signs that were out front is been permanently eliminated if the board were to grant approval for this modernization at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it only has 2 numbers because it's only 2 billboard locations, so it's 2 permits, right?
That's correct. It's 2 permits on 2 different locations, 2 state locations.
But at location 12, it's a single sign, it's a double sign space, 2 signs, and at location,
Actually, the other way around.
oh, I'm sorry.
Location 10 is on Shrewsbury Avenue between Front Street and Monmouth Street. This is really just across the railroad tracks from the Galleria, back of the Galleria, and on the north end of the parking lot for the building that has Sickles in it now. So that sign face has 2 parallel sign faces. On the inset, that's with the arrow and the arrow leader is drawn to number 10. It's the top inset. You'll see there's 2 sign faces, and each one of those has 2 sides.
And that's on 826 that we moved in, that's labeled 6805 Redwood Place. And that's the reason why I just gave you another copy of that.
So those are lit billboard faces that are currently operating. Your eyes might see them. Again, the 2 faces are facing north along both the railroad and Shrewsbury Avenue, and then 2 faces are facing south.
And Jennifer, just so that I don't forget later on, I know these are on A26, it shows 4 billboards, but how did you get up to the six? Are you saying some of them are?
That's the other one, that we're giving up two permits.
Okay.
Permit 10 is 4 billboard faces, and permit 12 is 2 billboard faces, for a total of 6 billboard faces, so.
Thank you.
So the next location is location 12. That's located at the west end of Oakland Street, where it intersects with the parking lot of the northbound train station side.
Okay.
As you go westbound on Oakland Street and you pull into the parking lot for the train station, there's a billboard on the north side of Oakland Street. The faces face east and west. So in other words, incoming to Oakland, you see a sign, and when you're leaving the park, you'd see a sign, or the sign faces the train tracks. So those are those two faces. So that's how we have those 6 faces, 4 at the first location, 2 and 2, and 2 back to back at the second location near the train station. And that's a total of 6 faces, 2 permits that would be eliminated under this application.
Right, and importantly, as I stated in my opening, and that you're gonna hear from our planner, if the use that's not permitted is advertising for off-premise, well, it's on a total of 2 structures, really. We're talking about 6 non-conforming uses, because each face is an advertisement for off-premises. Each face is more than 200 square feet under your ordinance. So each face is a non-conforming use on non-conforming structures. So we're proposing to eliminate 6 non-conforming uses in order to upgrade the current pre-existing non-conforming use. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And let's take a look at, if we can, 827, which is the photo. And this is similar to what was submitted by Tiago at the last meeting, but it's part of this packet. The first is a photo of existing conditions driving southbound on Route 35. And that shows the existing Bridge Avenue gas sign, correct?
That's correct. There's an SUV coming towards the photo in the foreground. You can see just over the roof of that SUV, the white billboard copy that's just above the rooftop. And in the shadow of that, our apartment building, and then to the right of that copy, you'll see Bridge Avenue Gas, which is the gas station ID sign that we mentioned.
And then the next page is based on the crane test, and as Tiago testified, that yellow and red pony cane-like thing meaning on the right of that is the actual crane that was there, in order to establish the height, to confirm that it was to scale, which was accurate. That shows where the proposed sign is used in the same location.
That's correct.
And again, that sign, in the existing condition, it's 22 feet high, and we're just proposing to increase it by 5 feet.
That's correct.
And the next page, and as was testified to, because the copy can change instantaneously, that's just another version of copy that might appear 8 seconds later.
That's correct.
And then the next page is from 500 feet traveling southbound, and again, you view the existing billboard and the gas sign.
Correct.
And then the next 2 pages show superimposed what the proposed sign would look like.
That's correct.
Okay, now I'd ask the board to go to the page that is labeled 61 Bridge Avenue. Because there were members of the public who had concerns with regard to what they might do to their property. So this is a computer-generated picture of what the view would be from 61 Bridge Avenue.
That's correct. You can see.
I'm sorry, 61 Bridge Avenue is which property?
It's across Bridge Avenue.
Got it.
It's probably the laundromat.
Okay.
Working on the laundromat.
Thank you.
And you can see that yellow and red striped placard that's affixed to the actual bucket truck. You can see the bucket truck that's in the lot. They set that, and this was in the previous ones, but it's not as visible. They set that at the height, relative height of the billboard and location, and then they measure off of that in the photo to produce the actual billboard image. So you see next to that billboard, the back of the billboard panel, that's all that's visible on the backside. You see there's one post there holding up.
Okay, and then the next photo is 79 Rector Place, and I believe that's more residential, is that correct?
That's correct, and we're looking across to the east, across the Lighthouse Ice property to where the sign is.
And interestingly, Dan, while it's shown as white in our photo, because it's a blank screen for purposes of computer generation, is this property within the view shed or the view angle with the narrow technology?
It is not, so it's not within the view line of the sign. It wouldn't be, no LED view would be able to be perceived from this location. So it actually appears just black as opposed to that gray or lighter color.
So if
During
you're,
daytime or nighttime.
right, so if you're standing at 79 Rector Place, you would not see any light, no lights from this sign would be visible based on our narrow view technology.
That's correct. The furthest west that the view proceeds from the proposed sign would be through the old Exxon site that's to the west of.
Just because I know that there were some questions and concerns, even if there was an epic failure of all types of electronics, the narrow view technology is not some fancy description of electronics. It's an actual physical structure that prevents the view. So even if the lights went haywire, and we had indicated that there's fail safe, and when that happens, it goes dark anyway. But the narrow view technology can't fail because it's a physical implement on the sign, correct?
That's correct. There's no adjustment to that technology. It has to do with the actual shape of the LED and also the louvered screws that are on either side of it. So that element cannot fail. It can't be adjusted. It's as it is.
And the next page is the view from 55 Rector.
That's correct. So now this is, we're moved further to the south and now looking behind the Lighthouse Ice. And you can see again, the back of the sign, you can see a bit of that placard.
Okay, and then the next sheet is just an updated version of what we could replace the temporary borough sign with the type of messaging that they could have up for 120 minutes during any given day, based on the scale of what our new sign is.
That's correct.
And then the last sheet is an overlay from the original photo that we looked at, which was 250 feet southbound. And that shows all three signs, the two existing signs and our proposed sign. So we want to get an understanding as to the comparative height and size of what's existing there today proposed. Want to just start that?
That's right. So the two existing signs, the existing billboard and the Bridge Avenue gas sign are both outlined in blue. And it's very light on there, so you can really see, it doesn't include the photo itself, but you can see they're outlined in blue. And then overlapping each of those and smaller than them is the proposed sign outlined in light orange and has a gray texture to the inside of it. So you really get a good feel for how the proposed sign compares to a lesser extent to the sizes of the combined existing signs. Yeah, and also one element, which I don't know what is mentioned, the gas sign is coming down, similar to the change of the proposed billboard, the gas sign's not there.
And we did testify to that as part of the original minutes on your plans.
I'm sorry, say that again. You did testify. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There was testimony from Tiago, and it's shown on our plans that if this billboard is approved, not only will the existing billboard come down, but the gas sign comes down as well.
Got it.
I got a question for you. I've seen a couple of these digital billboards and they're typically on a straight highway. This is on a very difficult curve where people are making two lanes, making sharp turn off, onto Riverside. Nobody considers that an issue.
Mr. Mass, before you answer, I just want to say that Dan didn't study this from a traffic safety perspective because as was testified at the original hearing by Mr. Antal and Tiago, there is a state statute which regulates the safety of these signs, and the Department of Transportation has the exclusive jurisdiction as to that safety element. And I actually read into the record in February what those safety standards were. and what they looked towards. So it's actually the same way if you come here for an application on a state highway and you're asking, is the entryway safe? Is it a left turn in safe? And the answer is, well, the state is going to review it and they are the ones that make that determination. They ultimately have the jurisdiction. I think Ed is often glad when that happens because it gets put on somebody else, not him. Similar to that, the state is the one, before they issue the permit, they look at all of those traffic safety issues, the visibility issues and everything else. You can't get the permit to do this unless the state traffic engineers deem this to be safe.
Do you have a memo or anything from the state that indicates everything that you just said?
Well, we have the permit, which we submitted into evidence. at the
Right, but
last meeting.
Okay, so the permit is it on the link?
Should be, yes.
And does it indicate the
It indicates compliance with the statute, and the statute goes through all of the safety requirements, so, yes.
Anybody else have a question on the board for this witness?
Mr. Chairman, I have one question. Mr. Doherty, in the crane test and the various images, one of my concerns has been the impact to the house that sits immediately behind the sign. And I know I think we discussed it a little bit last time. I think the owner of that property was here last time as well. Can you, and I know because there's different angles of each shot that you're looking at, so it's hard to really represent what that view, my concern was, given the horizontal location of the existing sign, it really doesn't block the windows of that house from looking northward towards the bridge and river. I know one of my initial fears was by sliding that sign, is that now gonna block, the classic air, light and open space, if you will, but that's gonna be an impact to that particular property. Can you speak to, in looking at some of the photos and the crane test that you did, recognizing that it's not an easy task because of those different angles? If you were to draw a horizontal line from the edge of the new sign and place that up against the house, where would that line up in terms of, if you look at it, for instance, there's two what appear to be second story windows. Would that be the edge of the new sign as proposed? Would that line up largely with the peak of the house? Would cover part of that window, or can you speak to about what that impact might be?
Well, first, I'd like to point out that that house is property immediately another
50 feet away, recognized.
So there's not a direct line of sight. It's not as if there's a single digit setback for both of us to the same property line, like you often have with, as you might, as you probably see here in town with older properties where you have homes that might only be 8 feet or 10 feet from each other. In this case, this house is 50 feet. So there's not a straight line of sight that you draw. At the height of 20 feet, I would say it's probably in the ballpark of a second story window. I didn't perform a measurement to that, but it's very similar in height and location as the existing sign. With the removal of the gas sign, I wouldn't think that there'd be any additional impact or negative impact.
A follow-up question to that, I see that you're representing in the documentary evidence here. You chose 250 feet and 500 feet for the purpose of photography. Generally, from the bridge direction looking south at what you'll see with the proposed sign and the existing sign. I think we heard some testimony previously about the visible distance. Colloquially, as I was driving down here this evening, I was actually surprised because in the daytime, I don't recall noticing the billboard, very far across the bridge. Coming here tonight, I could actually see the billboard as lit north of the Gold Lawyers building that sits right on the corner there. So the visibility line was much bigger than I had previously had mentally thought.
I think that Tiago had said that the 500 feet was at the peak of the bridge.
So my better question is, I know I'm not the best judge because my eyesight is failing in my older age here. Is there a definition of what is the accepted range of when someone would be able to utilize the image on that board? Is there any way to say,
No, it varies depending on copy, letter size, that kind of thing.
if you have a big picture versus small lettering?
In account, there's a direct, the roadway is aligned in a direct line with this site from Middletown. So you do have a long view of it. If you come down past the Gold Class building and come across the river. And as you could probably attest, as I can, my eyes, I have my glasses on now, my eyes cannot see that billboard from that distance. It's certainly what the copy is on the current billboard today, and that's existing conditions, that's existing.
And I think that Tiago had testified, if there's a Nike swoosh on it as the only, in the full size of the billboard, you might be able to discern that, but you need to be closer. And we did research and there is no sweet spot, so to speak, because there's so many variables with regard to weather, with regard to ambient lighting, and most importantly, with regard to type of copying.
I lied, I got another follow-up. Are you aware of any locations in Monmouth or anywhere nearby that are currently utilizing this narrow view technology that you're referring to?
I am not particularly, my understanding is there isn't one in New Jersey yet that has the same technology for you to go out and view, because it is brand new. Again, this wasn't on our proposal 11 months ago, but now it is. So we don't have it yet in New Jersey. That's my understanding from our Alfred.
But there is, it does exist elsewhere, and I could certainly give you a list of those. Want to take a drive?
How far away are we talking?
No, I wasn't proposing to join you.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the board for this witness?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. The, you know that there's a proposed residential building was approved by the zoning across on Riverside.
Yes.
So even with the narrow view technology, how many of those residential units do you expect to be affected by the lights?
I don't have estimation of the location of the units in the building or numbers of units. Mentions I know that buildings.
No, I don't think the mic's picking you up. I'm sorry.
But also, and I'm sorry, how do you, what's your last name?
Kanya,
Canio, Mr. Canio, when you say affected by the lights, I just want to be careful because there's a difference between the lights being visible and being affected by, meaning the people who live in that proposed apartment are going to be able to see the traffic light. It's going to, however, it's not going to necessarily have an impact on them. It's not going to shine into their home. So because I don't know that, because there was testimony that these are LED lights, they're directed downwards, they're not shining light out. They're not going to have an effect, meaning there's not going to be light shining into them. You remember that we had indicated at the last hearing, we gave you the lighting. I don't know how to say it, parabola that shows where the light would be at ground level. So it's not going to reach them as far as how you typically consider light casting downward.
So there's two types of lights you know we talk about in separate. There's one type of light, but really what we talk about with engineering, and that's the light that you see in a parking lot. What you're really trying to ascertain is this light's being thrown to the ground to help people see the ground, help people see each other at night for safety reasons. So that's really the only way to quantify that kind of light. Now, in this case, we have lighting not meant to light the ground or light any other kind of element. We have a light source that's here only meant to be seen. So the same way you don't go and look at the lights here in the ceiling and determine how good they are by looking at them, you look down here to see how well they're working the light here to your desk. But in this case, we're looking at a sign for the light to be subtle enough so that you can read the top. And that's why it has photocells on it to dim the light at night so that it gives you a balance of the light that's being projected from the device with ambient light. And then in the daytime, you get a brighter light because your eyes are adjusted during the daytime. You're not going to see that dim light the same as you would see it at night. So in this case, the way I like to think about it is that these LED signs are meant to look like traditionally illuminated flat vinyl signs. We want the public to see the sign the same way they would see the existing flat panel sign. We just have the ability to change the copy.
And then let me ask you a
Right.
question.
So can I just follow up?
It wouldn't, it would, let's put it this way, the neighbors on, if and when that property gets built, and it's approved, when it gets built, and it's actually residents there. There would be no more people affected or worse affected in proposed conditions than by the current sign, to which they can look out the window and see, right now, I think it's a white panel, right? They can see the white panel and the uplighting that's reflecting off of those panels back into their eyes at night. So it's not gonna be a substantial difference or any negative impact from what would already be there for those same residents.
Mr. Canio, I said it right, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, okay. Recognize, had there not been residential development right across the street there that we knew was there, we would not have been as willing to agree to limit the lighting because it really was facing a highway. But because of that, we're willing to comply with the ordinance. So right now, you have a lot of lighting in that area, being a busy intersection with the street lights and the traffic lights. And our current non-conforming sign that is lit at night, as Ed indicated, but we're proposing to shut that down at 11 o'clock. So I think the people, when that is built, they'll have a better situation. I know that Dan said it's not gonna be, it'll be the same as what's existing. I think it's going to be better because there'll be no light to be seen from that location from 11 PM to 7 AM.
And now you say it's gonna be better, that you're actually moving it over 17 feet, right? So it's actually gonna be a little clearer. It's gonna be more in their line of view, isn't it? You're moving it over 17 feet closer.
Again, I have to look at where that location is.
You mean moving it west from the current location? Yeah, it's facing that property less because to move to the west and facing the bridge.
Well, I'm looking at your sight line. Directly across from your finger there, they're building residential tower.
Right, but.
So, and you're moving your sign to the left of the property, aren't you?
No, we're moving it to right here.
Right.
It currently is
Right.
right here, so
Yep.
it's right across the street from it. So we're actually moving it from center of this property off towards the highway a little bit. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Yeah, I guess I don't agree with your interpretation. I feel like you're moving it more into the view of the residents who are gonna be living in that location.
No, the sign currently is further east than the proposed. And the property you're discussing is on the east side of Center. So we're moving
Can I ask you
west
to look
away
at A20, and that's the billboard location exhibit?
Can you hold it up?
I'm sorry?
Can you hold it up? I don't have it.
I'm looking at the numbers. And you see where our number 14 is. That's in the current location on the east, they're actually moving the sign to the west, closer to the highway.
So whereas as you look north from our site, the property you're concerned with is on our northeast.
Yes,
We're moving the sign west,
you're moving it west and you're raising it 5 feet.
raising it 5 feet, we're limiting the gas sign, we're moving it.
And you're moving it west 17 feet. Right, so right now though, isn't it current?
Moving it west is in the good direction to be away from facing that property. We're not changing the angle.
No, that I get.
And one other thing that I'd like to mention, mitigating that, we talked about the panels affecting the residences or the potential for residences across. In comparison to existing, without even mentioning the other two locations that will be eliminated that are currently lit this evening. So especially the 4 panels that are on Kingsbury Avenue, Kingsbury Avenue. And that sign particularly is elevated. So those sign panels are all visible tonight if you drive by from residences. And those will, we talk about ours being illuminated from 10 PM to 7 AM. 11 PM to 7 AM. Those signs will be eliminated altogether. So they'll never have that visibility day or night from the residences that are currently seen.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say in support of what Paul's saying, I think the difference here is
we don't know where the building is gonna be sited there. What apartments or if all of the apartments facing south will look at this proposed sign. But I think the whole idea of the technology of flipping the messages every seconds is what would be irritating to people who lived in the building to look at it because it would change. And I think that'd be quite noticeable from whatever apartments face it.
And Mr. Havens, I just want to say for the record, so the record's clear, you did a hand movement that indicates flashing. And I don't know how to.
Yeah, I
I
understand.
don't know how to describe it for the record, but,
Yeah, it's not gonna flash.
right, it's not going to.
But if you're looking out the window at a static sign that's there at 7, it goes into the background. If the message changes every 8 seconds for years, and there's different messages, different colors, different, so that would be something people in that apartment building would notice, for sure.
And,
But that's all.
okay.
Do you have any photographs taken from the site of the proposed residential tower to where your billboard's gonna be, what it looks like now, and what it looks like after you, if you were to be granted? No, we didn't.
Okay, any additional questions? Speak up.
I think it's an easy one. So my understanding is if approved, you'll be taking down the existing gas sign, correct?
Yes.
Yes. It looks on the last picture like that's a little higher than your 27. How high is that one?
I can only tell you that from that perspective, it appears higher. I don't know the actual height of the gas sign.
Okay.
But yes, I would agree from that perspective, it appeared at least the same size, if not a.
We're close, thank you. Okay, any further questions from the board? Or I open up questions to the public? Okay, any questions for, and there are questions for this witness from the public? Yeah.
Just taking breaks, you get more.
You need a break?
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Okay.
During the break, Mr. Carroll, move the extra exhibits to see to approve any member of the public.
I know. I don't think you can be able to.
Air in this building.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And if you have a bottle, it's a bottle.
I should come right soon. Oh, I'm gonna dump my coffee.
That would.
Thank you.
Right over the train stations.
Well, I'm glad you said. I'll need a break. I only listened to Miss Krimko for so long, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
I got my snacks here, I got my
Ben Euro. Sharon Lee,
Here.
Paul Cagnon.
Here.
Anna Cruz,
Here.
Eugene Horowitz,
Here.
Chris Higgins.
Here. Okay, we have a question from the public for this witness. And what we're gonna do after that is close the public portion for questions and probably move on from there, so. Need a microphone, yes.
All right, good evening, Sue. Happy New Year to you. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Sam Stone, 25 Cedar Street.
Oh.
Spell your last name?
V as in Victor, ISCONY.
Mr. Sconey, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
It was very intriguing talking about conceding to take down other signs, 6 other 8 signs. People always say they're gonna do something. Do you guys stipulate putting like a timeline, like X amount of days after you pass this or X amount of days, when the new sign goes up, that you should come down because, not you, but in general, people promise to
Yes,
do
we
things.
would, we would agree to a condition with a timeline as to when it had to occur.
Thank you.
Okay, so we close the public portion for questions for this witness. And at this point, we're going to adjourn the meeting because I think we determined that it's not gonna be able to finish tonight, so we're gonna stop here.
And Jennifer, you've actually requested that we adjourn because we're not gonna finish your testimony.
To extend the time in which the board must render a decision through the meeting following the annual meeting. God forbid there's a reason to keep a meeting.
All right, so we are going to adjourn this, Shauna, to, what's the date? April 4th, 2024, at 6:30 PM without the need for any further public notice. So all of you in the audience tonight, please come back on August 4th I'm sorry, please come back on April 4th. April 2024, and please let your friends know if they left. You're not gonna get another certified letter from Jennifer Krimko's office. So this is Mr. Chairman, will have a motion to adjourn this with the applicant's consent till April 4th, 2024. Someone can make that motion.
I'll make that motion to adjourn this based on the applicant's request.
I'll second.
You just all in favor.
Aye. All in favor?
Yeah,
Aye.
Any opposed?
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.